into it. That's a very, very powerful call to men, Shai. Maybe take us back to your awakening to this issue of gender-based violence. And I'm taking this specific route because you grew up around abusive men as a young man, and you fell into that trap of abusing your own partner. Take us back just very briefly about
Very briefly. I mean, we were shooting Soul City, in which I played the abusive husband. And during the filming of that particular scene where violence was being meted out to this lady, my screen wife, I suddenly tunnel visioned. I had this vision. Everything turned into my home. My screen wife, my screen kids, they were my family, and they were all screaming. And for the first time, well, then I saw the extent, the gravity of that violence, the state of helplessness that this violence of mine was bringing onto the hearts and minds of people that I felt I loved. I then felt, I shouted, cut, 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 and I walked off set. And all I could say was, it couldn't be me, because I could not relate myself to what I saw in that vision. And from that day on, I wanted to change so that I can give myself an opportunity to become a loving husband, a loving father. I wanted to give my children an opportunity to have a father, my wife an opportunity to have a loving husband.
Is your wife still with you?
Yes.
That very wife?
Yeah, that very wife.
It's wonderful to hear that there is a successful turnaround. You can bring yourself back. So it's a wonderful story indeed. And then, of course, Mr. Waqu, Reverend, talk to us about what your organization does and what it advocates.
Right. Thank you, sir. I am with the Methodist Church of Southern Africa, and I'm in Midrand at Calvary Methodist Church. And we have an initiative that's been running now for about 3 years. Of having a men's conference, and where we bring together about 300 men under the same roof and talk issues of men. And last year we had an opportunity to invite Ndoda Shai to be one of the speakers, and indeed his story moved us, and so we formed this partnership together. And this year we are going to be hosting together with Khuluma Ndoda father and son camp on the 30th of August. And indeed what it entails, it is to seek to bring a different paradigm to what human beings should be. That we should be loving, we should be caring, and we should pass on values that will strengthen then our sense of humanity. And we are looking forward to it, because then if then we cannot bring transformation, what else do we stand for as a church and as organizations like Khuluma Ndoda?
Shai, I want to give this discussion a human face. Kentani Masego. Students, friends, staff at the University of Rhodes, the management there, held this memorial. I want you to take us into the mind of the perpetrator, because it is alleged that it is her ex-boyfriend who has subsequently been suspended from school. Take us through what is probably going through his mind right now, given that what he has done has grabbed the attention of the entire country. What is he possibly going through right now?
It's a very difficult question to respond to, given the number of women that have been killed through femicide cases that we've had. We have not had the opportunity, unfortunately, to engage with the perpetrators. As and when that opportunity arises, we chase them away. So we don't get to fully understand what is it. I would like to go down and have a conversation with him, have a one-on-one, but I think in his head right now, he realizes that he has done wrong. And I think he's seeking help. He wants to cry out, I don't think he foresaw that Kensani would kill herself. But what I always say to Majita is that, gender-based violence is murder. It's a process, because a person that doesn't just die on the day that they get killed. With Kensani, we now see what the victim goes through, how difficult it is for them just to carry through, having had to be in the same class with the perpetrator on a daily basis. There is no further humiliation more than that. So the woman was dying each and every moment from that point of rape. But also I want us to go back and say, we may be looking at a case of rape that has led to Kensani's taking her own life. This violence started before rape, because the perpetrator didn't just start by raping. There must have been a series of violations against Kensani's rights and life over time.
As someone who deals with perpetrators, what would your advice to him be at this very point in time? Is it to sit in the walls of his family, where he probably has retreated to now, and cocoon himself there, not say anything up until this, he wishes, blows over? Or does it come out publicly and take responsibility?
I think the best thing that he can do is for him to stand up publicly and take responsibility, and then tell the world what led to this, and then tell the world how often had he violated Ukensani, because I'm saying it's not the first time. But the most important thing that we also need to look at, it's the enabling environment that is created for perpetrators. For instance, the family of this boy, they would know that he must have had a violent kind of nature or characteristic with him. So we need to also speak to the family. The family also must come out and say, we do not condone what our son has done, and therefore we want him to take responsibility, because he's not operating in isolation. Every perpetrator, you would know as a man that if my partner complains to my family would side with me. So the family of the perpetrator provides that enabling environment for the perpetrators. So Khuluma Ndoda is seeking now to begin to engage also with the families of the perpetrator. This is where the perpetrator is nurtured on each and every day. Uyabulala bamtholela isangoma, bamise inyangeni, uyafutiswa, bamtholela maloya. You understand? How then do you call a person who does this your son? You as a man who is the brother to this guy, how do you stand up and say, my brother, I love you, Sisimanawe? You cannot.
Reverend Waqu, let's bring you in. This perpetrator, I was reading, I'm not sure whether indeed this is the right age, but he's alleged to be 23 years old, okay? So he's still a young man. As a church, how would you work this out with his family? I'm going to go to Kensani's family, but I just want to deal with the perpetrator's family. As a church, what responsibility or what would you do to try and counsel this family?
Tolani, one of the things that we need to acknowledge as humanity is that we at times tend to do things that we're not supposed to do. And until there is acknowledgement of that, we are not going to be able to confront any ills in our society. Part of that is the fact that there are certain values that we have not passed on to our children. And the sooner we start doing that, the better. The value of acknowledging that which one has done is important. And so the first thing would be for the family, as Ndoda Shai is saying, that the family would need to acknowledge that this has been a huge wrong that has been done by their son. Secondly, there is always hope for any human being. Nobody should ever be written off. And I have a sense that indeed, even in acknowledging what this boy has done, would need therefore to be given a chance for him to be rehabilitated rather than to be condemned forever. Because it is in such stories that others can begin to see that there's hope for me. And my hope is that even this young man can be used as a way of showing our society that there's room for change, there's room for forgiveness, there's room for us to walk together and correct the things that have gone wrong. After all, as a church, we stand for forgiveness, we stand for people's lives to be transformed and for human society to be healed.
Would you encourage the two families perhaps to meet? Because in all likelihood, in fact, let me not be presumptuous in my question, but someone sitting out there is thinking how you mend fences in a situation like this is the one family, but in particular the perpetrator's family, probably goes across and reaches out to the family of the victim. Would you recommend something like that as a church, that the two families meet perhaps even before the burial?
There's nothing wrong in the families meeting. There would need to be a process of mediation and reconciliation that would be facilitated. Firstly, for the family, the bereaved family, to share their pain as well. Because at times we then send our condolences, Akshem, without having to deal directly with how they feel. And the better person to listen to that pain would be the perpetrator himself. And I think that the sooner we change the paradigm of dealing with crime in our country by allowing even the perpetrator to meet the victims, and the family here stands to be the victim. And if they can share their pain with him, that on its own could be a shock treatment to him, which then facilitates further healing and the process, therefore, of rehabilitation. And so I would, support the two families coming together, but that would have to be facilitated in such a way that it doesn't bring more pain, but it, in a way, helps the family to air their pain and voice it to the perpetrator.
Mr. Shai, you listened. I was looking at you actually with the corner of my eye as I was going through the stories ahead of this interview, and you listened very intently to those judges, the Deputy Chief Justice, and them recounting the stories. The Deputy Chief Justice speaks about a 50-year-old mother in KZN raped by her son, who is in his 20s. What needs to be done to change the psyche of the boy child? Where are we going wrong as society, as families, in bringing up young men?
There's a lot
to respect women.
That's the first thing that we need to do. The first thing that we need to do is to teach men in general, but in particular young boys, self-love. I think the absence of the love for oneself creates problems, because if I don't love myself, there is no way I'm going to love the other person or treat them with love and respect.
Can I interject there very quickly? Yesterday, listening to the memorial and the many speakers who spoke there, there's one person who touched me, and it was a gentleman who is a staff member there who spoke in his Xhosa, and he says, "You are giving us fathers today a very bad name, because you give the impression that we don't teach you good things when you grow up in these families. When you move out of this school as a graduate, what good is that graduate? What good is that accolade if you're a rapist?" So, again, I go back. Is it the families letting down the boy child? Or is it peer pressure? You know, some of the boys there at school, they were speaking about how, you're sitting at the table and you see a girl passing, and the kind of reaction that there is about it's sexual innuendos that they give off, as opposed to perhaps looking at a person respectfully. They look at them in a sexual way. How do you reorientate that mind?
What we are doing at Khuluma Ndoda with all the partnerships that we have, including this one, we're launching this partnership with the Calvary Methodist Church. We are seeking to get into the mind of a young man and begin to fuse in to that mind values that would include self-love, dignity, protection, support, for those that are weak or those that are perceived to. But the other important thing is to say to the young boys, do not objectify abantu besifazana. Do not look at young women as sex objects, because men is fascinated by sex. How that I still need to have a discussion, nama psychologist, nama psychiatrist, nani,
as to why we think this way.
Why are we wired to think that way? But it is not given that we all do that. We can still unlearn the things that we've learned quite a lot. In terms of peer pressure comes in the lane. We don't have positive role models in our homes, in our society, communities, and in the country with regard to the treatment of women in general. We do not have. We see it at different levels of society, in the business sector, everywhere, in politics, everywhere. It's shocking how women are treated. But we need to change that mindset, not only from Amachita Mangani, Namata Makhrote, Swakondis.
Just as a final word, Reverend, I'm deliberately taking it there because they're failing us time and again, and I'm not shy to say that. The governing party has a history, has a relationship with the church from the struggle days. What can you as a church do or say to the leaders of our society? Because they claim to be a leader of society. That's what the ANC constantly tells us, right? What do you say to them when they still harbor a woman beater like Mtutuzi Manana? There are many stories that I could say about the ANC and the leaders. Shai talks about we don't have positive role models. How does the governing party change that image? How do we listen to them and take them seriously about issues of gender-based violence if they still will have a person like Mtutuzi Manana sitting there and thinking that he can buy his way out of beating women?
Thank you, Kolani. You are touching on a very pertinent issue here of leadership in general, which in my view, it goes beyond just the position or sitting in office. It is a matter of influence. And the sooner we take the role of being influential in our society seriously, the better, from all walks of life. People who are in leadership, those who lead the ANC and who lead our country, have not just mushroomed from nowhere. They've come from within the society. And in my opinion, a person is never formed by their position. The person is formed by their upbringing. And the sooner we start, therefore, from the grassroots, and so that those who grow up to become leaders have certain values that they can share and be influential in society, the better. The problem with our country and our nation at this stage is that leadership is about positions and not responsibility and the influence that we need to have as those who are in office.
Shai, you speak about positive role models. I'm going to take this discussion now to a recent story. I'm not going to mention names, but I trust South Africans know who we'll probably be talking about. A very influential couple gets into a dispute. They go and lay charges and counter charges against each other. And then in no time, they both withdraw those charges against each other and the matter fizzles out. Aren't those the people that we are supposed to learn from? What does that do for this fight of gender-based violence when you have influential people who we're supposed to look up to as role models and they disappoint us in this way?
I wish you could be brave. I don't want to point some tambung pulu to Khuluma ngobani, but it would have been nice to say, here's a classical example of so and so. But I want to take it, yes, you speak about Lawante Spazi, the fact that we are even afraid to mention their names suggests to us conclusively so that we're not in a state of complete readiness to confront the sketched gender-based violence. But let me look at it from a different angle. You see, and also with the case Yamanana, where women are prepared to buy or to be bought so they cancel cases and stuff like that. That in itself creates a problem. From a woman's perspective, it creates a problem that they go and open cases, and because of maybe the comfort and the stigma that comes with it, they then feel they have to withdraw those cases. In this case that you speak of, Sagam Kari, let me be bold enough as an activist,
well, you went
yes. Kevin Mkari and the wife. The fact that they decided to make it a family matter creates a problem, because it says we are never going to break this silence against gender-based violence because we have this name, this stature in society and in business, therefore it cannot. It says to us, it raises the question that I asked in that clip, to say, how many more? But the question then becomes, how many more women are silent? How many more women are silenced by the comfort, material comfort that surrounds them? Grand, bank account grand, some are silenced by indlala, nan. We see a lot of these women. With the case Gamanana, here's a judge who says there's a fine, but the victim accepts 100,000 rands for that. What does it say to women? It says to them, "Mayeng shaile, mayeng angnikeza imali ngizoba grand." We have to. What we would like to do from Khuluma Ndoda, our next phase, is to have a perpetrators in Ndaba, where siyohlala nabo mfundisi and put them on the podium. Let's have an engagement nabo so that we can assist them. They can become advocates of no violence against gender-based violence. Because I think Abu Babu Mkari, the gentleman Mkari, and Arthur Mafukati, and Manana, they would be the best champions to lead, because they know they can never be continuously with Patrick Shai, who in the whole of South Africa stood up and said, I did this to my wife and therefore I'm sorry, and started this campaign, this program, Khuluma Ndoda. Whereas we've got so many who are silent. The guilty is all of us who now stand and say, Nyasihlaza, when we are not standing up to say, we own up for this and that and that.